facility by the American Legion. It's great to have assets like this in our community. Not a lot of people knew about it, more is finding out about it. Now that Walhalla 1 and 2 broke here, a lot more is finding out about it. But before I get, the American Legion is having a raffle of a whole list of guns. And it's $25 for a raffle ticket, and they have them on the back. If you're interested, Mr. Rick has them. Before you leave, please purchase one. So thanks for coming out. I'm glad the weather kind of stopped raining for us. Up on the mountain, there was heavy smoke from a 1,000-acre burn, so we kind of welcome the rain because it beats some of the smoke out of the air. But I just kind of want to break into, what county council is first, because I get a lot of phone calls and stuff. As a councilman, we're part of a group of 5, and we're a legislative body. As an individual councilman, we have no power amongst ourselves. My name is the council chairman. It takes a majority vote. We're a legislative body. We set policy, and we have a hired administrator who manages the day-to-day functions of the county. As a council member, I do not talk with county employees or department heads, other than Ms. Brock, who's county administrator, and the county attorney and the clerk of council is only ones who work for the council. With the exception of our elected officials, such as Ms. Herbert or Sheriff Crenshaw, they're elected as kind of a separate branch. I will have conversations with them. As we get into it, I want to lead off with the county budget. If you subscribe to my newsletter, a lot of this, all of this has been covered before, but I just want to lead into it. So, our budget since 2016, our operating budget, that's the portion of the budget that council debates the most, that we have the most say-so in, is the portion of the budget that is probably the most flexible. In 2016, the operating budget was just under $42 million. In 2023, the prior fiscal year, was right at $61 million. Now that increase of about 45% in that time period. In that same time period, and you may have heard me talk about this before, inflation and population increase within our county was at a little over 20%. So if I look at that, I said it doesn't make sense that our operating budget should grow at double the rate of our actual growth of the county. And if you put back and you say, well, let's have an operating budget that follows that metric, then the 2023 budget should have been at $50 million for operating, and that is a total sum of that time period years of right at $50 million. So here's a graphic. I like graphics. In my line of work, we use trends. I think trends is very visual. It's easy to see. The orange line is if you follow inflation plus population, and the blue line is what our actual funds was. So you say, I'll cover that. So how do we get here? So state law requires that we have a balanced budget, which is very good, right? Because that keeps you from deficit spending. But the problem that comes in when you have skyrocketing real estate values that drive up revenue, so then what you end up doing is you're chasing expenditures with revenue. Because the balanced budget law gives both ways. You can't spend more than you bring in, but you got to balance your budget. You got to match your expenditures to your revenues the other way. So how do we correct that? Well, how do we kind of plan for that better? Well, this year, the counties always have funds, different funds, but we switched to more of a fund-based budget. And what that does is we created some additional capital funds, which allows us to take revenue and designate millage to different funds for specific causes. I should backtrack too to say that you have to spend that money in the general fund. You can't plan to save the money. Now you may save some to your sinking fund if, say, you budget for salaries, you have vacancies, you budget for that salary rollback, but you can't plan for it. So fund-based budgeting, we created various funds. Just some example, we created a fire and emergency services fund. That's for fire equipment, fire trucks, air packs, whatever that may be. And in that fund, you're allowed to grow a balance. You don't have to spend it all this year, so you can plan for the future. So in the next 5 years, we know that we're going to have to replace 11 fire trucks. Well, this fund allows us to deposit designated millage into that account. We can spend some of it each year if it's designated, you need it. We can also accrue a balance, so when it comes time to purchase that fire truck, you can purchase it versus having to borrow the money. Now, it's also you may have to borrow the money too, but this gives you an avenue to start planning and preparing. And some other funds we create, Community Health and Human Services, that has the municipal fire contracts in it, Charisma Health contract, the health clinic that's in Walhalla, which if you've not been to it, I encourage you to go. They take insurance. They love to have insurance customers. It's a very clean place that's very well staffed. Talk about fire and emergency services. Advantages of fund-based budgeting. One big advantage is increased transparency. As money goes into these funds, you see what these funds are designated for, what they're going to be spent for, and as it builds a balance, you know, hey, it's building. And one thing that came out of our strategic planning retreat we had last Friday was the county administration and staff, they're going to build a capital improvement plan for various avenues. Solid waste, that's one of them. Fire and service, all of them say, hey, 3 to 5 years out, what equipment are we going to need? What expenses are we going to have? So we can allocate funds appropriately to set it aside for when those expenses come up. And the most powerful tool is that planning mechanism of it, because it gives the ability to plan long term versus every year, hey, I have this revenue, I got to find a way to spend it this year, so I'm going to need compactors, so let me get a compactor this year. I think I can get this, but now we can have long-range, long-term planning to meet the needs. I mentioned the fire trucks already. So that account is counting over a little under $1.3 million this year that was earmarked into that account, but it was not earmarked to be spent. It's being accrued for some major expenses. Also, $600,000 was carried over from a one-time capital equipment fund, set aside as an emergency or to accrue for future capital. We were going to be using some of that soon to purchase bulletproof windshields for the sheriff's department, but that fund was set aside for that type of reason. So the other part of this, how do you correct it? So now we got all the non-operating expenses out of the operating budget. So the operating budget is salaries, payrolls, lot bills, fuel. Well, we don't want it to grow that way again. We want planning. So this is where it comes what I term the Oconee conservative budget. And what it does is it caps the growth of the general fund operating budget to less than inflation, the rate of inflation change, and population growth. And now it has exemptions. So, and the exemptions is pretty broad. So council can bypass it, but the key piece of that exemption is normally to pass anything on council, it takes a simple majority. To pass a budget that exceeds population growth and inflation, it will take an extra vote with 2/3 majority. So instead of 3 voting, it will take 4. And also, it doesn't penalize you. So you look at that inflation and population growth, not as a target, but a do not exceed. And if the council and the county goes a couple years and say a percentage point less than, 2 years later they need to, something comes up and they need to spend it, they can still pass a budget with a simple majority by recapturing that past percentage and bringing it forward. So the general fund operating budget is only half the story. Like I said, it's the budget that the council deals with the most. It's what we talk about the most, what we debate the most, but it's only half of it. So the total fund budget, that encompasses all funds, and a lot of funds in the Tri-County Technical College Fund, the 2 special victims funds, I think state mandated. There's a host of funds. The total fund budget in fiscal year 23 came in just under $82 million. So fiscal year 24, they came in just under $92 million. So that's a change of $9.8 million. But in those total funds, that included $4.5 million in economic development grants that came from SC Power Team, which is like a conglomerate of the co-ops, the state, and Blue Ridge Electric Cooperative. So if you move those funds out and set that aside, the increase in county funds would have been about $5.3 million. But I think it's important too to note that because the way we shifted budgeting, we set aside another $1.3 million in Fire and Emergency Services Fund and $600,000 in one-time capital fund that's meant to grow for future expansions, for future planning. Versus if we didn't switch to that, that more likely would have been spent this year in the operating budget. So one thing we've done is we've really, once we had a changed the council majority, we really wanted to back the first responders. The sheriff for you, and the council has increased law enforcement officers over the years, but the sheriff has said, I want more officers, but I need more pay before I get more officers because I can't fill the position. And the state of South Carolina, those state law enforcement officers, highway patrol, and other state agencies have really raised the pay of theirs, and we're behind. So we came in this year and we raised the initial certified deputy pay to $47,500 from $41,500. And that pay increase didn't just start with the beginning deputies, it went up the chain of command, up to like the leadership level, I think about $75,000, and those above that got a 3% raise. Also started in firefighters. So we would hire firefighters, train them, in 3 months they would leave. And it's just a revolving, I think we had a 60% turnover rate each year in firefighters. Well, we tackled that, raised their pay from $34,000 to just over $43,000. And for the first time, at least in recent history, Oconee County has already trained and certified firefighters applying for open positions to come to Oconee to work. So we're not going to be the training ground for other departments now. We're able to get certified individuals. And I just want to say this too. So we want to add more deputies. So we went from 41 to 47.5. Hopefully this year we can add 4 deputies. That's 1 per shift. And like I said, it's not just me. The council majority has to vote on that. And hopefully we can work on the pay too along with that, because we want to keep inching it up to be competitive with the state. But I went on a ride along Friday before last with Rashad Crooks. I don't know if you know Rashad. He's a big old guy. You don't want to mess with him. And Rashad's an investigator now, but Rashad and I know each other, and he came in on a Friday night to work road patrol when he didn't have to, and he took me out. And to say I'm impressed will be an understatement. So from the time I got in the car with Rashad, we started off with a shot built at a Dollar General, and then we didn't stop the whole night. It was one call to the next call to the next call to the next call. I think by 10 o'clock there was 5 arrests made. And the way these guys communicated with each other, the way they communicated with dispatch, you know, we're talking a lot about deputies, but the dispatchers, the way they coordinated the shift that night and put people where they need to be, the way these guys backed each other up, you really get a sense of the brotherhood that they have, because they go into tense situations and they got to rely on each other. And that's something that most of us don't have to experience. But the way they curved the county, and we went from the Beltline to Walhalla to Friendship to Fair Play, I mean, it was all over the place. And all night long, and Rashad was extra. He came in extra, right? So he was an extra deputy on shift that night, and it was still wide open. And I'm sure it's not, you know, wide open maybe on every Tuesday night, but the place on Tuesday nights is wide open too. And they got to have the deputies in place to protect us that we need. And I really got the sense that as these guys are dealing with these situations, the way they handled and communicated with the public of every level, social class of their county, was truly amazing. But you get the sense that every night while we're sleeping in our bed, these guys is out in a war zone. And that's, if you watch these footages of people going door to door and stuff, that's what it felt like. But I wish everybody could experience that, because it'll give you a whole new appreciation of what they have to do. With that said, so as you know, Deputy Watts, we had a deputy shot last fall, and he was doing everything he was supposed to do as he was trained. And he's trained to exit the vehicle and engage in what they call the apex of the car, the door in the car. And as he was exiting, he was struck with a bullet, and it came through the windshield. And the windshield technology now is, you know, we all think about bulletproof glass, you think about it being this thick, you know, and $10,000. Well, the technology's really changed. It looks like normal glass now, and it's much more affordable. And the county staff, the administrator, Mr. Maynard Brock, trying to pop them, Frosty, I don't know who has the name at the motor pool, and Dwayne and the sheriff, they've done a lot of hard work to research this and to find the best supplier. And I'm not going to say who the supplier is because of security, because everything has its weak points, but they did a phenomenal job in a quick period of time as far as paperwork issues to bring that forward. And we're going to vote to install ballistic windshields, and the police cruisers at the next council meeting. And I'm not going to reveal any security by this, because this is stuff you can look up online, but they did a demonstration of it, and I thought the public would appreciate it. And I'm just going to show one quick video. It's quite amazing, and inside, nothing penetrated through, and it's amazing technology. And unfortunately, we didn't have it sooner. But I believe as we go forward, we're going to other cities, communities that's doing it too. Just like Bulletproof Vest, how when you first got those, it was too bulky, too heavy to wear, too expensive. Now an officer doesn't leave without it. And with this, I think it's going to be commonplace if we go forward in the future. And as I've been out and about, I've had spouses and I've had parents of their deputies talk to me about this. And what it does is they think it gives their deputies a peace of mind and confidence. And then their families, as they send them out the door, it gives one more level of assurance that hey, they're going to come back home to them. So what about the other employees? So law enforcement and firefighters are important. But the reality is, if you don't have a motor pool, those police cruisers aren't going, right? So it takes a team to move the county forward. And the county had given out raises over the years. Over the years, they've given out blanket raises, some very large blanket raises, like 6%. But that didn't really address the need of the lower paid workers who may be underpaid. It just keeps widening the gap. So the county for years they'll give out raises, but they wouldn't adjust pay scales. So what you end up with is long-term employees who they're staying, they're stable, but we're trying to hire truck drivers CDL drivers at $13, $14 an hour. And you're just not going to get a CDL truck driver for $13, $14 an hour. So we'd have we couldn't fill positions. If we did fill it, they would come in and leave. We'll get certified and leave. So all of the employees, last year, the fiscal year 24 budget, received a 3% raise. All employees at 3%. And then we designated another $445,000 in targeted raises for other employees. Those critical needs employees who we couldn't staff, couldn't fill, that's identified by the administration. I believe it's targeted employees that made less than $45,000 a year. With that as well, we commissioned a salary and time use study because we want to know. We want people to be paid appropriately. You don't want to overpay people, but you don't want to underpay people too, because I'm not representing other employees. I represent the public, the people to the county. But if the public people of the county is going to have the quality services for the taxes they pay, there better be quality people working to deliver those services. So the salary and time use study, we expect to come back soon, this spring. And it looks, I've had somebody say, why don't you use the Association of Counties numbers? Well, we have job titles in the county, same job titles, different departments. That's two completely different jobs. So that's where the time use comes from. It's actually going to rewrite the job descriptions to actually reflect the jobs that are being performed and give us an accurate wage for that job. So we're going to talk about economic development here, and the highlights of 2023, and this falls back to Jamie Gilbert. He's the economic development head. He's the president, CEO of Oconee Economic Alliance. And I'm not going to read all this, but I'm just going to hit some highlights here. So last year, 2023, was a record year, $85.9 million in new investment, 267 new jobs. Announced new jobs have an annual payroll of $17,327,000 with a median annual wage of $29 per hour. And 48.6% of announced new jobs are estimated to have a wage of $40 an hour or higher. So amongst South Carolina's 46 counties, Oconee was 5th for projects, 11th for jobs, 13th for investments, and 10th for jobs and investments combined. And Mr. Gilbert, he's been here about 2 years now, him and the staff, to do a great job of going out and finding these industries. But one thing he does excellent on is recruiting a current industry. We can't be so focused on what's out there anymore, what's here as well. So we've had a number of current industries expand over recent years. And this here just shows the breakdown from 2014 to 2023. And you can see the number of investment, the number of projects, and the number of jobs, far outpaces the average over the last 10 years. So now we talk about that. Let's talk about planning for the future. So a rising tide lifts all boats. That's a quote, it's a popular quote. Does anybody know what president said it? Anybody? Reagan?
JFK.
So a lot of people say Reagan, and I thought it was Reagan until I went to put it in here. John F. Kennedy actually said it first. But if you read Kennedy's policies, he would actually probably made a good Republican today. But then Ronald Reagan used it later in years when he started describing trickle-down economics. But so I firmly believe the best way to give people hope is to ensure that they're able to find a good job. And, this county's growing. 50 years ago we had 50,000 people in the county, and we had 10,000 students. Today we have almost 80,000 people in the county, and we have 10,000 students. And some people, that's not because of homeschooling. The county homeschools its whole family. If you look at the census data, the age group, it's been 10,000 for 50 years. And so what that indicates is that our children are growing up. If they go to Tri-County Tech, which does an absolutely phenomenal job, they go to Clemson, well then they go somewhere else to work and raise their family. And all the plus hasn't been from births, it's been from older folks moving in. And obviously the lakes have populated in that last 50 years. So we're investing now in key sites and key infrastructure to plan for not next year, not the next 3 years, but for the next 40 years. And trying to ensure that you can have children, they can be born here, grow up, get education, and then find employment in the county and not have to leave. So all that, one portion is creating a Golden Corner Commerce Park, which will be on our agenda for approval. The bids came back, it'll be on approval for next Tuesday night's meeting. It's going to be funded by a $1 million grant by the Power Team. That's a conglomerate of the electrical cooperatives, and a $1.5 million state of South Carolina grant. And I believe it's going to take about $700,000 of county money from our Economic Development Fund. The grant came in the bid came in about $400,000 less than we were suspecting. And the reason for grading is, so the previous councils put an emphasis on OITP, the Oconee Industrial Technology Park on Highway 11. So they put an emphasis on that part, and let's get tenants there and put Golden Corner on the back corner, and they graded the whole site. And it's a good thing they did, because once they graded that site, industries really began moving in. Now it's almost full. So now we look to the next part and what we need to do. Mr. Gilbert and economic gurus, they say, hey, these companies, they want pre-graded sites so they can see what they have, and they can move in and they can get going, quickly. Because grading is part of the longer process to these type of construction projects. In addition to that, we have the Sewer South project, which has been multiple years, multiple phases. The first phase, I'm going to have to ask a historian when the phase 1 went into on 59. It's been some years ago. Is Tony Adams in here? Tony, what year was that put in?
2015 and 16.
2015, 16, and it's always just laying out the pipeline, like how you lay the major artery over a highway. That's got it down to a pumping station that can pump the waste from the interstate back up to the Conner Ross treatment plant. Phase 2 is currently going in the ground now. That project was approved a while back. It just took a while to get going. And that takes it to exit 1 and exit 2, the south side exit 2. Now, if I had my druthers, I'd rather run it to exit 4 first. But that was all put underway before my time on council. But that's where it's going right now. It's going in the ground. If you've been in that area, that's where it's headed to. And then, let's see here, I got some pictures maybe. Right here, some pictures. So that long pipe right there, that's the lake bore pipe. So they fused that pipe together and laid it on the ground. And I think the lake bore was the biggest, I guess, worry people had, but it went smooth. I mean, no hiccups, no rock hits. And they laid that pipe out and they fused it. And I had a video that Mr. Eliezer had made, but I couldn't find it. I put it on here. But they laid that pipe out and fused it, and then they just inched it in, like inch by inch, under the lake. Phase 3, I don't know if this is called Phase 3. I know there was a sewer study out there with different phases, and that's part of the thing that confused people. But The next phase is probably gonna be several different phases, but I'll just kind of go through them. It's exits 2 and 3, so that's all 4 corners of exit 2. And there is not an exit 3, what you hear commonly referred to as exit 3. There's not an exit there right now. That's the Durham Road crossover on the interstate. And then exit 4, and then the corners of exit 4. And that also connects to a 65-acre parcel that is owned by Blue Ridge Electric Co-op, and that's why they're helping fund the project. And I'm really going to build a spec building on that site. As far as costs, and these cost estimates, they've not been put out to bid yet. So for phase 2, that's in progress, that's $12 million. Exits 2 and 3, that's $6.5 million. Exit 4, $5.5 million. That's 4 in surrounding, not just a pipe 2 exit 4. And exit 1, $4 million. That's a total of $28 million. So the funding for that is U.S. Department of Commerce grant, $3.7 million. South Carolina State grant, $2.2 million. Ruse Electric Co-op grant, $2 million. And a bond of $25 million. So if you add those numbers up, you say, well, that's about $5 million more. Why $5 million more? Well, when we put out to bid years back, we had an estimate, cost estimate for this phase 2 that's going in the ground right now. That project went over in time because the time it took to get easements. You know, we hit this record Biden inflation and costs just skyrocketed. So it's to build in a little bit of buffer. Those estimates also don't include the engineering plans or the easements and stuff like that's going to go along with it. Well, hopefully we can come in under, and then with that leftover money, we can pay that back down into debt services. So maps get you in trouble. Mr. Van Hart sent out a map and said, hey, give me your opinion on where you like sewer to run. And it had different mile markers. And people took that and ran, well, they're running sewer, all the way to my grandpappy's house. So this map here is just a reference or an estimate because all the engineering hadn't been done. But I really put this up here just to show you the bottom corner down here in the green is the interstate area. And the different colors at the top is Westminster, Walhalla, and Seneca sewer service territory. So you can see that a municipality sewer service was never going to make it to the interstate. That's why it fell to the county. So that's the only exits of interstate in the county. You know, the whole corridor from Atlanta to Charlotte has grew up with industry. The goal is to have industry come there and be maintained to the interstate corridor. And that's to create jobs for the future. Now, is it going to happen tomorrow? No. Is it going to happen next year? Probably not. And that's one reason why we chose to bond the money, because you won't see an immediate return on that investment. I've had people say, well, why don't you just pay it outright? Well, the county has $12 million in the sinking fund, roughly. And then we have other funds we cash in for pensions, health insurance, different liabilities. And let's say we rob them all, well, we'd probably be hurting. We probably couldn't make payroll at the end of the year because you use some of that sinking fund when the revenues don't come in at the end of the year. But if you did, I mean, using future value of money and the rate that we got the money at, we're going to pay back about $42 million. But $25 million a day in 20 years using future value calculations is about $45 million. Now, because the county has such a good credit rating, because of the sinking fund value, the county got a $1.3 million premium that was paid to it. So premium, we borrowed $25 million, we got $26.3. But state law doesn't allow you to use that $1.3 million for whatever you want. It mandates that you put it into your debt services fund. And that will make the first 3 years of payment on the bond, and I kind of got ahead of myself here, on the bond as we go through and kind of levelize, but we have some other bonds being paid off here soon, like the jail bond that's going to come up. And, I don't know, I'll get to a slide here, so I don't misquote. But, so how it works is the bonding limit goes off of your assessed value of the county. So assessed values of the county is just under $645 million. So 8% of that gives us where we can borrow $51.5 million. So counting the debt that we already have plus the $25 million, we're at $35 million. So we're at, what, 67% of our debt services fund. So it's not deficit spending. It's going into debt services fund. The longest status that's paying that dedicated mills is paying the debt. And it's not even near the top all the money we're allowed to borrow. But here, this graph is kind of confusing, but the different curves, that's existing debt that's being paid off. So one's paid off by 2027, another one's paid off by 2029, and all the existing outstanding ones is 2031. And that blue line that goes up, that's the available money you have in your debt services cap. Everybody's favorite subject, roads. Do y'all know how to identify a county road versus a state road? How?
Doesn't have the white lines on the outside of it.
That's right. So county roads, for whatever reason, I don't know what dictated this, but they don't have white lines on the shoulder. And there may be a case where that's not true, but I've not found it yet. So, as we look at roads, so county work crews, they work hard on the roads. State roads, you know, if you drive around state roads, they're much worse shape than the county roads. I've asked for a report, I've not got it yet. I need to follow back up on it, on how much revenue we paid into the new gas tax to fix the roads and how much it came back to our county. But as far as county roads go, so I put this graph up earlier. This was general fund spending from 2016 to 2023, and you can see what that's done. So what do you think the spending to our roads has done? That same time period, this is the spending on a road maintenance fund. So it's over right at 1.2 million. So this year we increased that. We reallocated 1 mil to it. So that 1 mil represents a 47% increase in funding for that. So that's a positive. Some more positives here. If we go back to the payroll issues we talked about in salary and wages, back this time last year, the roads department had a 60% vacancy rate. So it's kind of hard to fix roads when you got 6 out of 10 employees, you know, spots empty. So right now, after we increased the pay and took the step we did, we're actually at a 90% occupancy rate. The arbor crew, the crew that goes around and trims the roads, is fully staffed. And pothole repair now takes 5 days, and they was at 11 days out. And something that was bought with a fund that was developed before I came on council, the capital vehicle fund, was a hot box. And that hot box takes the asphalt and keeps it hot. I'm not an asphalt expert, but it keeps it hot and allows them to pretty much fix the potholes with fresh asphalt versus tar and cold material. And that hot box has allowed the potholes repairs to last an average of 2 years, which before the old way they was doing it would last about 4 months. As far as roads, I get calls on roads a lot, and the best way, if you have an issue, so you can go to OconeeSC.com and go to the roads department, and then there's a link in there to fill out a work request. I found out when I was preparing this that that's a little cumbersome, so I think we need to find a better way to do that. Maybe get a direct link, like Oconee Roads or something people can remember. Just click around. The best way is to call this phone number here if you want to take a picture of it or write it down. And what that does is you'll talk to Ms. Sheila probably, and she'll take any concerns and generate a work request. We're also in the process of generating an app. I can't remember now what it was called or what Ms. Brock told me it was called, but we're generating an app that allows people to download an app and report issues on their phone. You know, whether it's a pothole, whether it's a lane in the road, whether it's a litter issue, you know, different things on the road. Another thing is SCDOT roads, all them state roads with the white lines. The best way, I have a link here, but the best way is just type in SCDOT pothole blitz and fill out the request. And we had some neighbors do that, and they came up and fixed the potholes pretty quickly. Which is just the best way is just to Google it. This brings us to growth, right? So we're growing county. I imagine there's quite a few people in here who aren't native Oconee. So we're growing, a lot of people moving in. If I step on my porch in Mountain Breast, I got neighbors from upstate New York, Wisconsin, and South Africa. So to say that Oconee's disturbed, I mean people are moving here from everywhere. And that's because it's a great place to live. It's got liberal land use policies, low taxation, but we want to preserve that too. But I have some growth patterns here from 2021, 22, and 23. And the darker the color is, the more dense the growth is. So you can see we're still experiencing the most growth around the lakes, especially the southern end of Kiwi. And a little bit over here, what's that, maybe close to Clemson. So this creates a lot of debate in the county, right? So people move here because they like to be able to do what they want to do with the land. And the people who move from South Africa, Wisconsin, northern New York, to Mount Rest, they got different views on that than people who may choose to move to Kiwi. So that creates, conflicting ideals. I believe in property rights, but I'm also like everybody else. I don't want to be crowded out. But I do know that it's already almost unaffordable, where it is unaffordable for locals to live in our county in the next generation. And a lot of ideas people have is, well, I've had somebody call me, lifelong sale native, so why don't you just do a moratorium, stop all this development? Well, one, we legally can't do that. And I'll go into that in a minute. But if we did, the people from California and New York, they're still coming, and that's just going to drive up the property prices through the roof to where your children won't be able to buy a house here. But legally, we can't do that. If we want to do a moratorium, it has to be for a specific reason, or a very specific time period, and you have to resolve it, or else you're going to be sued. Now, that's what the city of Clemson ran into. We talk about density. I don't want to live in a high-density neighborhood. Some of you may live in one. Some people want to live in one, and some people, that's their housing options or what they have to afford. So there's a place for high density. If we go in and take the whole county and say, you got to have 1 acre in a house, we're talking about urban sprawl, that creates even more sprawl. So we talk about reserving farmland, that eats up even more farmland if you made that requirement. The answer is probably somewhere in the middle. Mike Johnson, who's the new chairman of the Planning Commission, he is working on some ordinances that the Planning Commission can take it over. They can take the unrestricted area and say, hey, if you have a development, lot widths at the point of the construction have to be X number of feet wide. And that's intended to control density. Now that's going to have different effects. Everything you do has a side effect maybe you don't see. So if they develop that ordinance, I'll reach out to different people. There's people available, realtors associations, stuff that can give you data on what that can look like, what that can do to the housing market. Because what we do has a ripple effect, and I want it to be a great county for us to live. I want to create jobs to where my 2 children here can grow up and work in the county. But if you're going to have jobs in the county, people got to be able to afford to live in the county. And I would love for them to be able to afford housing and live in the county. For us not to become a retirement bedroom community to where the people who work here come from 45 minutes away, which is what's happening in Asheville and Cashiers and other areas. But that's an ongoing debate, and I'm sure some of you can have some opinions on that, and I'm welcome to hear them. Elections. So I get a lot of calls about elections and ballot boxes and paper ballots, and I would love for us to have paper ballots. We used to have paper ballots, and they count them. You knew who won the presidential election before you went to bed. Now we have electronic ballots, and you don't know for a month. But unfortunately, county council has no say in elections. So state law governs elections. Even locally here, our state delegation, they appoint a local election board who then hire an election coordinator. And it's sort of like how council hires a county administrator. And so we're not involved in the election process at all. I mean, that's probably the best thing. You don't want politicians being involved in the election process. With that being said, there's been a lot of talk about a Homeland Security Safe Elections Assessment. I've heard this been called an audit. It was an assessment. And I'm not seeing this assessment. I don't believe anybody on county council has seen the assessment. People in charge of election security have seen the assessment. Again, I don't think it's best for elected people to maybe know weak points in the election process. But I've heard it's been told that we failed a Homeland Security audit. Well, the information I've received is that they said that we did excellent, but here's some areas of recommendation that they had that you may want to improve on. So I don't know where that information came from. Maybe it's people who've seen the assessment that I haven't. But some quotes that I have been provided to me was that it was provided as a guide for consideration and implementation of future security measures. And employees are well trained and are aware of the existing issues with the facility. They have developed procedures to support each other and maintain public confidence in the election process. And that's all I've seen of the assessment, and that's what's been relayed to myself. It's also been said that we cut the elections budget. So that is what we do, part of the election process in the county. We do fund it, but we absolutely have not cut the budget. As you can see here, 2024, that budget is $394,059. That's a 29% increase over last year of $304,458. Excuse me, $304,458. And that's a 67% increase over the last presidential election year, where it had a $235,000 budget. So somebody saying that we have cut the budget to elections, that's absolutely false. So I can't come up here and not talk about the rock crusher. So roads is not the number one thing I hear. It's this, and it's every day. So the rock crusher produces a lot of rock, but it's not meeting the demands of our customers. And I don't have a solution for that. We're working at it. I mean, we always do some training to try to dive into some solutions. I think it's a multitude of things. I believe that they purchased the wrong machine when they purchased it several years back. It's a portable machine that's meant to sit on the side of an interstate as they blast rock through a mountain, not meant to run, for 8 hours a day, every day of the week. And so it's constantly breaking down. We have about the only one in America. It was made in Sweden, and getting parts and communicating has been difficult. So that's a big issue. Also, a rock is cheap. Right, so in business, in general in business, you say if a product's if you're selling out of a product, you can't keep it in supply, then it's too cheap, so you should raise your prices. Now, I don't believe we should raise prices because that's a county-owned asset that county citizens own, and I believe it's an asset built by cheap rock. But you can't buy cheap rock because out-of-county people come and buy the rock, and people buy the rock and stockpile it to double the price and turn around and sell it to you. So, one thing we discussed in the strategic plan meeting was having two rates, an in-county rate and an out-of-county rate for both businesses and residential. Businesses, they can just get a permit, you own the trucks. Residential, you can just show your driver's license. So you ensure the citizens are getting the rock at a value price. The problem with that is if a truck driver comes from Pickens County to haul your rock, then you're going to pay more. But again, if we did that, it also incentivizes people to use local businesses. So I don't know, that's what we're going to do. That's just something we discussed last Friday. I'd love to hear your input on it. But there's a multitude of issues with it. I know it. I hear it every day. Probably, honestly, 2 or 3 messages a day. Every single day. So, please take a picture of this. This is my phone number, my email address, and my website. I put out a monthly newsletter. Sometimes I might miss a month if there's not a lot going on. Sometimes I might put out 2. I have all my past newsletters on my website. If you'd like to sign up for the newsletter, you can go to OconeeToday.com to sign up. And it has, it comes straight to your inbox. I don't blast you. Like I said, I try to do once a month. I send out 2 for this meeting. I'm kind of worried after people might unsubscribe because they get in spam. But please do that. And all the information I've covered tonight, I've covered at some point in the newsletter. But this time, Mickey, if you want to come up.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. All right, now it's for the fun time of the night, the question and answer. Please, like I stated, make sure you're specific in the question you're asking and to the point. And we need to respect everybody's time so that everybody can ask the question that's on their mind. If you would raise your hand, I will come to you I would like for you to state your name and what precinct you vote in. And then the question, I will stand beside you. Mr. Durham will repeat the question back to ensure that he fully understood what you was asking. And once you're okay with that, we'll let him answer the question. You're first.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Do I need to stand up?
No, you're fine.
Thank you again. Thank you. Appreciate you putting this on tonight. I've got a question. My name's Bob Winchester, and I'm in District 2, and I wanted to pursue the bond issue. And I've asked a couple of people, actually more than that, but I haven't found out how a person in Oconee County could purchase some of these bonds that are being used for Sewer South.
So when they put the bonds out to bid, and I don't know how this works either, but I was told they had a record number of people seek the bonds. And I'm not sure what that number is or how that process works, but I think it went through the large banks and it was gone immediately as soon as it went to sell.
Next person.
My name is Bill McGinn. I live in Mountain Rest. I appreciate the fact that the county has increased their road maintenance budget. I guess it seems to me like that it is not nearly enough of an increase. You look at the last 9 years, and the county has repaved, I think it's 20.45 miles of road. The county has 502 miles of road. At that rate, it's going to take you 200 years to replace the roads. And the lifespan of a road, a paved road, is 25 years. I appreciate the fact that the county tax rate is significantly lower than a lot of other places in the state. But it seems to me like that if we increased a little bit in the tax rate, we might do something with the county road system and bring it up and not have to, right now it's just a scramble to patch.
Okay, so we increased $1 million last year, first increase in 10 years. So we hope to increase that further this year. We're still early in the budget process, but that is the hope. That's what came out of a strategic planning meeting. And also from a strategic planning meeting was for the administration and staff to do a thorough road assessment of our county-owned roads, both paved and gravel. We have a good amount of gravel roads as well. And then to develop us a plan. The whole thing was about planning. So we can have a plan and going forward of how we need to fund the renourishment of the roads in the county versus a year-to-year paving contract. The council needs to know so we can have that data available so we know what we're funding so we can be responsive to the citizens. So I hear you. I know what you're saying. I don't have an answer for you, but we do know that assessment's coming, and hopefully that'll lay out a roadmap to tackle the hundreds of miles of county-owned roads.
Hi, I'm Susan Ryder. Live in outside of Walhalla, District 2. I don't have a question, but I have a concern. With the increasing development in Oconee County, and I'd like to see the county have a plan for these developments, because I see so much clear cutting going on, and Oconee County is beautiful with its trees and waterfalls and everything else. But if we totally don't realize that this is a fragile environment too, or could be. I mean, if you look at what happens out west and where they're building where they shouldn't be building, and then now with the weather change and all that, or what's going on out in California, these people are coming here. But I'd love to see us get a development plan that encourages planting of trees rather than seeing developments going on where there's nothing but dirt and we get rains like this. I'd really like to see the county address that, because we are, the second fastest growing state now in the United States.
So we're second fastest growing, I think we're about the 8th fastest growing county. So a lot of I hesitate to speak, this is what I've been told, but I've been told that a lot of the reason why people will clear cut is because the water runoff plan required by the state almost requires clear cutting for the grading that's involved to handle it. Again, that's something we're looking at, that's something that the planning commission's taking on. But again, that drives up home price. If you make the cost to build higher, that makes the cost to live higher. So as these plans come forward, we've had, in previous years, we had stuff coming out of the planning commission that was mostly just aesthetics, you know. But what we're seeing with development, I mean, they're taking a different look at things. We have a new chairman there too. He's met with each council member. He has a roadmap to try to go through these things. There's one councilman in particular who likes to say, we have no development standards in this county. If I printed the development standards, it'd be about that thick. So we do have development standards. Are they to everyone's liking? Probably not, right? But one thing, like I said, that the chairman of the planning commission is bringing forward is pretty much a density restriction that says if you build a house, it should have this many feet between it. That may make more room for vegetation. But also that is, he's talking about putting overlays in around the cities and a little bit outside the cities where you should probably have more density. I know that didn't really answer your question with a solution, but the planning commission, and that's something that they're taking on head on this year.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth O'Connor. I live in Mountain Rest. An alternative possibility for increasing the millage for roads and the costs for repaving, let them go back to gravel. That'll also help control speed up there. Well, actually, pretty much anywhere. You know, works in places I've been stationed in the military, and I live on a gravel road, and you know, I have to go out and maintain it myself because it goes through the national forest. But gravel roads are a viable option, especially on the lighter travel roads.
So I wish I knew how many miles of gravel road we have, but it's a pretty decent amount. I don't believe most citizens will want the county to go to gravel roads. I believe we can increase our funding to roads without raising taxes. I mean, if you look at the past few years, we have been reallocating those funds to roads. We could have been inching it up. It was brought forward at the council strategic plan retreat by a council member to bring a penny sales tax to pave roads. I personally, he suggested bringing it to a referendum to let the citizens vote. I personally will not support that referendum because we did a gas sales tax increase, and I don't know that you trust the government to do what you want to do with your money. So I don't. So I wouldn't support that referendum. If council majority, I'm just one, like I said, did support sending that to a referendum and would then follow the citizen. But at that point, I would probably be campaigning against it. Because if you have, we got 40,000 voters in this county, and 21,000 voted for it, then it's going through, and 19,000, they're paying a sales tax increase, which will probably be substantial, So no, that's what I said on additional funding. And I think we can, through proper budgeting and reallocating the funds, increase our road maintenance fee without raising the tax.
Hi, my name is Mary Duff. I live in Walhalla. I want to express my disgust with the federal government and our election process. It is really one of the reasons I'm trying to get more involved locally, because I feel that we are in a situation in this country where it's not representing the people. Therefore, the people have to start on small local levels. So I'm saying this as a sort of a precedent to my concern. I'd like to know the increase, when you put the numbers up there, the increase to the budget for election was substantial. And I'd like to know really what actually that increase represents. Does that increase represent greater election integrity security, or does it represent more nonsense? And where is that money going to do and what are they doing with that money, basically? And I understand that as a councilman, you're not directly involved with elections, but we as a people, I believe, have to start small scale and work locally to affect, at least to preserve the state, the election integrity of the state. So that would be of great interest to me if you could look into that and maybe perhaps put that in the newsletter where exactly that substantial increase went to. Personally, I feel we need to return to IDs and paper ballots.
Thank you. So I can look up and see where that goes off memory. I did not include it in this slide. But you're absolutely right. Washington's broken. Columbia's not much better. Everybody sits and watches Fox News and says, oh, look at Congress. But they have no idea what the local government's doing. On county council, all it takes is one person, there's two others to raise your taxes, to place property restrictions on you, to do things that really impact your life. There's reason why I say this at the Congress, because they don't really ever do anything. But the local level, they can affect you just like that. And the path to restoring America, there's not a one of us in this room that really have an impact at all in Washington, D.C. But you can have an impact here. And so when we got a conservative majority on county council, I said, well, it's our role to show what that looks like, what conservative governance looks like. Because we show it here, people see it, voters here see it, and then it works up the ranks. Then you start electing different people, holding different levels of government accountable. But everything starts local. You can't have an impact here. What we do here can gradually have an impact on neighboring counties. You know, one of the fellows said the brush fire freedom, right, it spreads. Well, I believe that's what we want to do here in Oconee County. We want to be a free county. We want people to live freely. We want them to have low taxes, have a high quality of life. And let our neighbors from Pickens, Anderson see it. Let it spread. Let people see what that looks like. Hey, let's elect conservatives to state legislation, and then let's select a few of them and send them to Congress. But it all starts local. You hear the term politics starts local? Absolutely, 100%. Thank you.
All right, I'm Luke Moore. I vote in the Neary precinct. My question is about the new ordinance for the population plus inflation. I believe you said a while ago that in the last several years it's outpaced what it should according to population plus inflation. And you said that had it not did that, the budget general fund would have been at about $50 million. My question is that you guys cut the budget pretty good in the general operating fund, which you was able to cut down to right around $60 million, I believe it was. So that tells me that population plus inflation would have been nearly $10 million shy of what you needed to do today. So with that projection of if it wouldn't have worked over the last so many years, if it would have been $10 million shy of what you needed to spend in this budget cycle, where do you see that changing to where it will keep up with pace in the future?
So as I said, the law dictates that you have to have a balanced budget in that fund, in that operating budget. So revenues increase, expenses increase. You know, once government grows, what did Reagan say? There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program. Once government grows, it's extremely hard to cut it back. So I'm not looking at the past or seeing what could have been restricted 10 years ago. I'm looking to the future and placing meaningful, real change that can change the way the council works from here beyond. I don't plan on being on county council forever. So other councils can use it. One thing council did prior to most of us on council now was they implemented a fund balance policy that said by, I think, year 2026, maybe 27, somewhere here soon, that our fund balance, which is a sinking fund, emergency fund, had to be greater than $25 million. And if it wasn't, future budgets would have to have a supermajority. That's kind of where I got the idea for this one. But because that council had that foresight, they was part of them close. I mean, I think they was down the sinking funds about $5 million. And that's close to the way the county operates. You have this money, you collect revenue at a certain point of the year, mostly tax revenue. towards the end of that fiscal year, you're not collecting any revenue, so some of that money balances you in that part of the year, and then as revenue comes back in, it replenishes it. So they was close to probably not being able to make payroll at some point in time if they kept going that way. But because that council set up that policy, future councils, including the council I'm on, strive to maintain that sinking fund. And I think we may be at that 25% this next budget cycle, or not, and will be the next one. That's how a council can have a positive impact on policy going forward. And that's what I'm looking for, a meaningful policy that we can set in place that sets the county up for the future.
Yes, I'm Dan Manhart from Cherokee County, in Cherokee Lake. And as to address that woman about building integrity, you know, I subscribe to the Epic, and there's a wonderful article in there about Nevada, how all those everybody got a mail-in ballot, and the people never used it, and they all got counted as votes. This is what's wrong. And we've got to somehow get a hold of our governor, our AG, and stop any mail-in ballots, at least in our state.
Yeah. So I'm not a fan of mail-in ballots. I did vote early in person. I do think we should vote early in person. I think that's fine, in-person voting at Pine Street. I do trust that process mostly. The biggest risk we have in elections is human error. When we look at Greenville County, they sent out double ballots for mail-in voting. They said it was by accident. Also, my campaign 4 years ago, at the time, the West Union precinct was split between 2 districts. And I had a gentleman call me. He took his wife and 2 children to vote. He had already voted. He said, "Matt, you wasn't on their ballot." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you wasn't on their ballot." So what happened was they was given the wrong ballot from the West Union precinct where it was split. So that's why I fought hard when we did redistricting, at least for District 2, not to have a split precinct. We're still ending up with a split precinct, I think, in District 4 and 5. But I was rather shocked, and the election director that was here at that time is no longer here. But I wasn't upset or angry. I just called and interested in early voting during COVID. And I understand everybody was kind of taken off guard at that time. All the early voting was new. But I had called just to find out and inquire what was going on. And I was met with a very angry person on the other side of the line, which is not what I expected. And I simply asked the question, I said, "Well, what do we do to make sure this doesn't happen in the future?" And I was met with nothing, because we're already trained, we're not changing nothing. And that was only 3 votes, and 100 people voted in this precinct. I thought, well, that's a 3% error rate. You know, that's pretty high. And that's the 3 we know about, not counting the other people. I mean, I just say there's some people in this room who maybe don't even know who your county council representative is. And then people probably went to the poll and said, "I guess he wasn't on my ballot." Well, I guess he was. You know, maybe they're getting a ballot of mine, you know, not. So, training, human error, and I mean, I do believe, you know, you can have some malfeasance out there. I mean, you look at what happened in Georgia. We don't want us to become the next Georgia in South Carolina. And that comes from policy from the state. You know, we can't enact anything like that here at the county.
It happened in 6 states.
Yeah. And, well, that's, so anyway, but the recent, like I said, assessment said that the staff was very well trained, but that also assessment comes from the federal government too. So, but I do believe that the people in Oconee County do the best job that they can. For 12 hours on Saturday, I stood outside that door from 7 to 7, and I saw the workers in here be very diligent, be very respectful of the public, be very careful in how they handle material when they did curbside voting. We have, 31, 32 precincts, people involved in the public party could probably answer that for me, and I think we have 20-something voting locations. There's 2 precincts here. So I do have confidence in the integrity of our people here in Oconee County. I do believe that the state should continue to tighten, you know, our voter laws, you know, to ensure that we don't become the next Georgia. But as far as answers to that, at a county council level, this really is completely out of our hands.
know you said that we have one question, but I'd like to put in one recommendation or question to you to try to take to the county concerning the voting and the legality of it. There is a way, as the federal government uses, what's called a common access card, known as a CAC. It uses a certificate. So it's something you have, something you know. You can vote using that CAC because you have a certificate if you live in this county. Nobody else can get one. Nobody else can use that person's CAC unless they have the key to get in. And it would eliminate any of this people coming from other counties and so forth, or people voting twice, 3 times, so forth, so on. So I would like to ask that maybe you make a recommendation as Oconee County moving ahead of others, that something like that be put in place.
Did you say CAC?
CAC, C-A-C.
Is that kind of like the real ID?
No, sir. Real ID is a driver's license. Now, I've been working cybersecurity with the Department of the Navy for years. Common access cards are special cards that have a chip in them, much like your credit cards and so forth. They cannot be duplicated. That is one right there with the chip in it. They are controlled by certificates from a locked security certificate authority, usually guarded behind locked doors and so forth. People can't access it. And it's a very good way of issuing CAC cards, not real expensive, to every citizen that's allowed to vote.
So I like that idea for voting. What I would be scared of is once we get some type of national thing like that, it being implemented that's required for other things, to buy groceries, to board transportation. That would be my biggest fear.
Well, if you start somewhere in the county, maybe it'll grow. Now, the other thing I wanted to say, I'd like to ask, is what is Oconee County doing to prevent companies from using the county to increase their profits and take away from you? Now, I've got 3 counties: Dorchester County, Berkeley County, Charleston County, all destroyed by our Governor Haley, allowing these people to come in, giving them tax breaks, giving them all kinds of donations, and most of the jobs, 80% and above, came from out of state. So it didn't produce many jobs. What it did is drove the cost of living up down there. There was no infrastructure built. You can't even drive around the place anymore. So what is Oconee County doing to prevent things like this from happening?
So I went to school in North Charleston, so I know what you're talking about in that area in the growth in the last 20 years. So this one thing I've always said is, we're not in a position to be needy here with economic development. So we need to be selective. We need to be cautious when we bring in new industry. And we talk about laying infrastructure and sewer line. Quite honestly, we have enough $14 an hour jobs that we can't fill. Now, if we talk about that, we have, a 53% job participation rate in the county. That's really roughly half the people eligible to work actually work. And children are leaving, so we're talking about trying to bring good jobs here to keep your children here to work. But we just need to be cautious, and we need to be wise in recruiting the industry. One of the biggest things on my radar is the EV industry. For some reason, Governor McMaster, he's decided to make us the EV capital of the South. And the industry is largely propped up right now by federal dollars. And when we got Tom Barkin, he was the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, and he sits on the board also that does interest rates. He came down to Oconee and met with some of us. And I was actually surprised when we got to talk to him, ask him questions about how frank he was, and he didn't answer the things the way I expected him to. Maybe it's because he went in front of a TV camera. But I asked him if he thought the electric vehicle industry was overbuilt, and he said yes. He said he felt like 3 out of 8 companies may survive in 10 years. Because right now it's oversaturated with everybody trying to develop this technology, take the federal cash, and a few survive. And once they do survive, will be behemoths, but the rest of them won't. So we don't want a large battery manufacturer in our county that's going to be a vacant building in 3 years. And personally, I disagree with the state putting so many incentives in that industry. In Oconee County, we want to recruit long-term industry that has a long-term track record, that supports our value system in this country and in this county. You know, that's going to fit. And as a county that's not needy, you know, we're very fortunate to have industry in this county that's a good tax base. We want to keep diversifying that for the future, but we just have to be very selective and not jump on, you know, every shiny wheel that comes by, because everything that glitters ain't gold. And I appreciate your comment, what you said.
All right, do we have any more questions?
Thank you, Mickey. I'll stand up over here if that's all right. So I'm a young man, a Walhalla 2 taxpayer constituent, and I'm not one of the happy ones, so I'll just get that out there on the front end from a standpoint of where we stand. And that's in the county level, that primarily relates to 2 things, and that's the most recent budget and the $25 million bond for sewer. But surprisingly, I'm going to give a little PR here to Matt. So when you ran in 2020, you ran on 3 core principles that would guide your voting decisions. Do you know what those are? You want me to say them? They're off your website.
So I said that I would not if it increased taxes, if it enlarged government. What's the third one, Jim?
Does it infringe on personal liberty or property rights?
I said I would vote no.
So yes, he said, if I answer yes to any of the above, then I will vote no on that question. And so that sounded real conservative to me, and he got my vote. But between 2021 and now, I do have a problem with the budget process, and I have a problem with the $25 million bond for sewer. That was a loan that we all have to pay for. So I would like you to answer those 3 questions related to the bond and sewer. Did it increase taxes? Did it increase the size or power of government? And does it infringe on personal liberty or property rights?
So it does not infringe on personal liberty or property rights. All easements, and I've heard people say eminent domain, all easements was purchased and voluntarily sold to the county. It does not increase taxes because the funding for it falls within the debt services fund that's been long established with a dedicated millage rate. And which one did I not answer? Property rights, taxes, and it does not enlarge government because it is not a branch of government. It's providing core infrastructure which our citizens need to thrive in the future.
All right, do we have any more questions?
Mr. Hart came in. I guess I didn't do a good job advertising. I sent out direct mailers to District 2 and sent out to my email list, which has quite a few people on it, and spent some money on Facebook advertising. But Mr. Hart's not on Facebook, so he thought the meeting started at 6:30. So he's here now. That was poor communication on our part, but he would like to speak.
folks, don't worry, I don't have any slides, I got one on sheet of paper. And, Mr. Dow looked back there, and he said, "Are you gonna speak?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, let me give you some advice." He said, "Start off with a strong point." He said, "And finish up with a stronger point." And he said, "The secret is to keep them short." So that's what I'm trying to do. We're looking at me and Matt, you'll see that I'm quite a bit older than him, and you'd think that I'm his mentor. But it's a reverse situation. He is my mentor. And the reason I give you an example on that, when we had this corridor, 2021-6, there was 7 different main arteries into Oconee County and leaving Oconee County that they put into this. And it was voted on. We had 2 votes on it, and we had 3 liberals that voted yes, that they wanted to take away your rights on your individual property. Matthew and I were voting against it twice. And it looked like we were going to be going back to things that happened in Russia because of this, the way this bill was written. And I talked with Matthew about it, and I said, "What can we do? What can we do about this?" He said, "The only thing we can really do, we need to go on social media. Let's put it on Facebook." And we put this on Facebook, and Mr. Moore was there to speak on it. He even spoke on it, and he thought it was overboard. And I appreciate that, Mr. Moore. But to give you some examples, on a house or a building, if it was over 25 feet long, in that 25 feet, if it was 25 feet longer, you had to put in a 1 window or maybe more windows to break it up. You didn't want to have a wall. And to designate that building, you could have timber framing and structure elements, natural or artificial. 15% of that should be that. On stone foundation and structure, it can be 20%. For rough wooden siding, it can be from 0 to 65%. Stucco, 0 to 65%. Glass, 0 to 65%. And then any other materials, 10%. And that was one of the things that drove us sort of batty about this. And the next one was if you was going to get a certified occupancy, they had to come out and had to take photographs of the project to make sure it was completed. And then they would send it to the planning commission. And then if they disagreed with it, they would cancel that. No. And the reason I tell you, Matthew, when he did this, helped us get along and get that out of there. But this speech for me right now should be the easiest thing that I have to do because I'm fixing to get into the part that I really wanted to talk about. I've been on council going on, I'm starting towards my 8th year. In that time, I've worked with had an insurance salesman on that council, a CPA, an attorney, and myself a surveyor. And we had a machinist. And out of those that I'm talking about, Mr. Durham is the most qualified person that I've worked with out of those 8 years, coming on 8 years. And if people in District 2 should be very proud to have him here to represent you. Out of all these people, like I say, out of all those people, some of them was trying to use county council as a stepping stone so that they could go to Columbia and be down there. Now, out of all those I've just named, Matthew Durham is better qualified than any one of these people that I have worked with. And far as the budget that's coming up, we got a CPA on there
that said he could spot a wasteful spending. Stevie Wonder could do a better job than this. And so I would suggest you people to keep him on your councilman as long as you can, because somewhere down the line, I think that you're going to lose him to the Columbia crowd, because he's the best one that I've seen so far to represent Oconee County in this upper district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. So what he didn't mention was that crazy restrictive ordinance came out of the Plan Commission that was chaired by Ms. Gwen McPhail. But thankfully now we have a conservative-led Plan Commission, and I believe that they're going to work hard to generate a good product for the citizens. And so you've heard of Tell Willie. So I took a Willie body and I put Glen's head on. I said, tell it Glenn, because that's what Glenn does. But no, I have no desire to do anything other than serve on county council here in my home. There's no other place you can have this kind of an impact, but I appreciate those kind words, Mr. Hart. And again, I encourage everyone to please sign up for my newsletter if you haven't. It's an easy address to remember. I've been working hard to try to grow that list. It's much better than Facebook, which restricts and governs and algorithms, dictates who sees it. This goes directly to people's inboxes. So as you talk to your neighbors, your family, your friends, please tell them to go here and sign up. If they don't like the product, which I believe they will, I'll try to put out as much information as I can. They can always unsubscribe. But I appreciate everybody, please, for taking the time to come out here tonight. It means a lot. Please take back to your community and your neighbors and share what you learned. And please reach out to me with any questions or concerns you may have in the future. Thank you.
So those that are afraid to ask questions of everybody, please take time to shake hands with these representatives, or these people that want to represent us, and ask those short questions. Thank you.